Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, April 1st, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about this breaking news story from Joe Manchin's office that he is switching political parties. Rather than stay with the Democratic Party, the party that elected him back in 2010, 2012, and 2018, he has now switched over to register as a Republican in this state in a very similar move to the incumbent governor here, Jim Justice, who was just re-elected in 2020. Now, if you don't remember, back in 2016, Jim Justice was elected as a Democrat from West Virginia. 1 year after being elected in 2017, he switched to the GOP. The same thing is now happening here with Senator Joe Manchin switching party control ultimately to the Republican Party. Looking at the 2022 Senate elections, they get more daunting for the Democrats as they look at this party switch. Mitch McConnell is now the Senate Majority Leader with 51 seats to the Democratic Party's 49. It's a very unfortunate reality for Democrats that they no longer have the Senate majority. They had it for around 2 months now, and Joe Manchin swept in and said absolutely not. And if you look on Joe Manchin's Senate website, you'll see that he just now announced this switch to the Republican Party. It's something very new and very relevant to the American media. I mean, looking at this party switch, I'm sure it's something that many people were, in a sense, yes, expecting, but largely hoping would not happen. Joe Manchin also announced it on his Twitter around 19 minutes ago, saying that he was switching to the Republican Party, saying that the Democratic Party of today does not reflect the values that he ran upon back in 2018. And as you can see, there's already a very negative reception, looking at nearly 10,000, more than that, quote tweets of this tweet alone as of the time that I opened this. And it looks as if that Joe Manchin will be taking over the energy section of the GOP in the United States Senate. It seems that was the sort of compromise here with Joe Manchin in order for him to switch party control. And if you think about it, I mean, Joe Manchin has been very outspoken of the GOP, of the Democratic Party in the past. When he announced that he was running back in 2010 and ran for re-election in 2012 and 2018, he was running not as a liberal Democrat, not as a left-wing Democrat, but rather a centrist, and rather someone who is more conservative in thinking than liberal in thinking. And now today, he is arguing that the Democratic Party no longer represents the party that he truly wanted to be on the national level. And, we saw many conflicts, even dating back as early as the 2020 election. Joe Manchin had said back in February 2020 that he's not ruling out endorsing Trump for re-election. Even though Donald Trump vehemently campaigned against him back in 2018, he recognized that his constituents are very much pro-Trump. If you look at the 2020 election results, you will notice that West Virginia overwhelmingly went to Donald Trump. Joe Biden did not win a single county. In fact, Joe Biden won just 29.7% of the vote. And if you're looking at the West Virginia Senate results in 2018, well, you could have seen this coming. Joe Manchin only won by 3.3%, and it would make sense that the only way he could win in the future is as a Republican. He nearly lost in 2018 when it was supposed to be a very solid year for the Democrats, and looking at what happened in 2020, that seemed to be the final straw. And looking at the consistent argument with Chuck Schumer here in the United States Senate, it sort of makes sense that Joe Manchin would want to switch political parties, because now he's ultimately giving the Republican Party Senate control, which means they are going to be at his beck and call for the next 2 years. With Joe Manchin's party switch, I'm going to show you what it looks like now on the YAPMS map. It brings the Republicans to 51 Senate seats. The Democrats are now at 49. Just that West Virginia seat makes the map look redder. On top of that, now the Democrats are at a point where they're going to need to pick up one seat, and if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris don't win again in 2024, they're going to need to pick up two, which makes 2022 that more difficult. Looking at the map that is up, what you'll notice is that there are retiring Republicans, but because of this party switch in West Virginia, that is now a safe characterization because it isn't up in 2022. And looking at the Senate map, this means the Democratic Party, rather than just having to retain all of the seats they currently have, not only will they need to hold on to New Hampshire, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, 4 states being heavily targeted by the GOP, they will also need to pick up at least one. And their options are not necessarily super limited, but they are in a sense, because the GOP could be at a position where they're able to win, obviously, in Alabama. That's not really in consideration. Missouri, Eric Greitens could be the nominee, but at the end of the day, I would say the GOP still has the advantage. Ohio will still lean towards the GOP even with a retiring Republican. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Wisconsin seem to be the only options. But if West Virginia just flipped red, there is not as much energy on the Democratic side as we're looking at, leading into 2022. Because rather than have any Democrats retiring, which we probably aren't going to see, maybe Patrick Leahy in Vermont, the Democrats are going to be facing an uphill battle. Rather than holding on to the Senate majority that they were expecting, well, what you'll notice is that Mitch McConnell took this away. I mean, essentially, the numbers are not working in the Democratic Party's favor by any stretch. Looking at what happened in 2020, the Democratic Party only won Senate control because they had Vice President Kamala Harris. This is the closest the Senate majority has been since 2001. And as of today, it's expanded to the Republican Party's favor. Rather than the Democrats be at 50-50, the Republicans are now at 51-49. That is a huge difference because it now gives the Senate majority, as I said multiple times, to the Republicans, which means we also have a change in leadership. Rather than abolishing the filibuster, that is no longer in consideration. On top of that, it seems as if, Joe Manchin's internal quarrels with Chuck Schumer was the determining factor, saying that the Democratic Party has shifted too far to the left for Joe Manchin's liking, for the people of West Virginia. And looking at what this does now, Mitch McConnell is now the Senate Majority Leader. Mitch McConnell will be up here. We will have a new Senate pro tempore. Looking at the overall Senate map, it just looks redder. First of all, because I switched the small bubbles and the large state characterization based off whoever's in the majority. And the Republicans now are at an advantage because this is the majority they had leading into 2018. And in 2018, rather than the Democratic Party gaining seats, they actually lost seats, which brought the Republicans to 53-47. Which means in the event that happens in 2022, because of West Virginia here, the majority looks a lot more daunting. Because the GOP will start out with this advantage, and what they could do is potentially win Arizona and win Georgia, which would bring us right back to where we were after 2018. All progress would be lost because of this move by Joe Manchin. But I think he largely took this into consideration because he knew exactly what he was going to be doing. He knew exactly what this would do for the Democratic Party. And a lot of this, I think he's trying to win the favor of President Trump here. Joe Manchin seems to be, in a sense, simping for Donald Trump for his reelection bid in 2024 because he knows that he can't win without Trump voters. He didn't do it in 2018 without Trump voters. It wasn't just Democrats who turned out. These were longtime Republicans that endorsed Joe Manchin because they knew him as a governor and they respected him. Well, he almost lost with all of that behind him, with a high approval rating, and at the end of the day, he is better off as a Republican in the state in terms of re-election chances. And this also means, that he will not be criticized nearly as much by the Democratic media and the Democratic, when I say Democratic media, we're talking about left-wing sources here that have been trying to completely push Joe Manchin to the furthest part of the left. And, Joe Manchin has been pushing back and saying, this is not the Democratic Party that I ran under. This is not the Democratic Party I want to represent. But until today, he did not ultimately decide to switch political parties. So what I'm thinking is that Joe Manchin is just being petty. I think Joe Manchin is going to, look at this and say, you pushed me too far. You made me move to the GOP. And many Democrats are going to be looking at it and saying, did we do this? Is this our fault? And, Joe Manchin, this is a very abrupt announcement. I mean, this is honestly so surprising, to say the least. Some would even say it's a prank, right? That Joe Manchin would go so far as switching to the GOP. But I can't say that it's super unexpected looking at someone who considered endorsing Trump for re-election and, has been not necessarily, not necessarily someone who has been from a state that would obviously re-elect him. He's not from a safe state. I really don't see why he would expect to be in a very good position looking at the Senate results after 2018. And, this is just something that the GOP has certainly been asking for quite some time now. They've tried to reel him in any possible fashion, but it looks as if the ultimate deal breaker, or not necessarily deal breaker, but deal maker for the GOP was giving over energy control to Joe Manchin in the United States Senate, which was more than enough for someone who has been vilified by many members of the left to switch political parties. And I think that looking at 2022, the Democrats are looking at this and saying, holy crap, we no longer have the Senate majority. What are we going to do? Well, there isn't much they can do. Because if Joe Manchin is switching parties, what's to say Kyrsten Sinema isn't next? What's to say Mark Kelly or John Tester isn't next? This is starting a dangerous precedent here, one that was set back in 2009 by Arlen Specter, and he's following suit 11 years later. And, looking at or 12 years later at that, but looking at the Senate results in 2020, everyone knew that it would come down to Manchin, and now he's pretty much screwed over the Democratic Party, potentially for years to come. Because this Senate majority is not going to be easily eroded. Now that the Republicans have the majority, they can block Biden from doing whatever they want and make him an unpopular president. They realize that this is something that was, critical to the Democratic Party, and Joe Manchin finally broke after nearly a decade, more than that, potentially being lobbied by the GOP. It looks as if he's, very clear in where he stands on the party switch, and it looks as if he's going to go ahead and follow through with this party switch. So, just to be clear, if this is the first time that you're seeing it, if you can't find it on your internet or on your Twitter feed, I want to advise you, maybe reset your router, reset your computer, reset your device, whatever it might be. Might be a little bit behind, and I also want you to take a look at the date because that could also be an indicator of, when this news story would actually be released and, what to expect based off that determination itself. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my post 2020 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Happy April Fools, and I will see you all later today.